Good morning and welcome again to another Loving Well initiative. We are talking to people about God's love and about loving well. And today we are here with Judy Jellison. Hi, Judy. It's really good to have you here with us this morning. And Judy is a wife. Judy is a mother. She's also a grandmother, but she is also an evangelist. And she and her husband, Jay, travel year-round, right, with Becoming Love Ministries. And we have met them and prayed with them and spent some really good times with them. And so we are excited to have you here with us this morning, Judy. And
Thank you.
We're just excited to talk about your journey with God and how he has loved you. And specifically today, I think we're talking about God teaching us to love ourselves. So I am excited about that, and we are happy to have you here. Tell us where you are right now. Where are you guys now?
We are home since we're not traveling right now. We're in Topeka, Kansas, and this is where our kids live. Most of our kids live in this area, so we get to be home. We can't see them right now, but we're in the area, so we're thankful.
Good, yeah. Well, I'm glad you're able to be home for a while. That's always good.
Yes.
Well, I know that you had initially made contact, or Sarah had initially made contact with you. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about what you guys talked about and when you contacted Judy.
Judy?
Yeah.
Well, I've just, first of all, just kind of gotten to know Judy because she and her husband, Jay, came 2 years in a row. Did these appointment times at our church where they would listen to you and pray over you and just really love on you. And I just really want to mention that because I remember when Judy just put her arm around me and Jay prayed over me, and it was the love of God emanating out of Judy. And it was so beautiful. Yes, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so when I grow up, I want to be Judy. No, I just want to be like Jesus. I want to be like Jesus. So, and that's, it's just so simple, right? But I listen because of my job. I listen to many of the Becoming Love Ministry speakers, CDs. And so I've heard some of Judy's story from Jay, just from his story on some of them. And so that's how I feel like I know a bit of your story. And I know it was messy, right? Like, I mean, all stories are messy and
very much so.
This like straight line. And but that's everybody. And to get to where you can put your arm around somebody that you really don't know and just emanate the love of Jesus, it doesn't happen, right? I mean, there's a journey.
Right.
So, so that's why I really wanted to have you speak on this subject, because you do really well at loving well. And I know that the journey to loving yourself is a big deal, and that's been a journey for me as well. And so that's kind of where we're coming from. What's going on in your head right now, Judy?
Awesome. I'm thinking about, this morning as I was sitting here thinking about all the things that Jesus has taught me in this journey. I mean, I was just overwhelmed with his love once again. And it's beautiful, but it is a fight of faith. I mean, that's what we're in. And so you got to fight for it. And I think that's where maybe a lot of people fall away or get weary in fighting for it. And so I feel like my passion is to be like a mother hen and to gather as many as I can to help them recognize that you've not gone too far. There's no condemnation in the kingdom, and that he loves us unconditionally. And I mean, he's faithful. And so I'll have to be careful not to chase rabbits today because there's so much to say, and I don't want to spend too much time.
Well, that's
so
thankful. I'm so thankful.
Good. I was just going to say, if there's a specific thing that you can share with us that one of those messy things that you had to fight through to realize how much you were loved.
Well, the biggest thing was, and I'll have to take you back to my childhood. When I was born into a family of unbelievers, and my parents were a little bit older, and I had 4 other siblings that were graduating from high school, so there was quite an age difference. And the first thing that I remember as a young child is hearing that, and it was a family joke, and they never meant harm, but it was that I was the accident, the unplanned one, you know, the oops. And I know that there's a lot of people that hear that, but my circumstances actually confirmed what I was hearing, because everybody was busy doing their own thing, and there really wasn't any time for me. So in the very beginning, I started to believe that I really was unloved, that I really had no purpose, that what in the world was I even here for? And when you start your life that way, if someone doesn't come along and help you to recognize, you know, that there's this big God that loves you so much. I lived my life clear until 8 years ago, not knowing how much he loved me. So he's done a lot of work in 8 years, but it has been a journey, you know. It's I had to fight for it. You know, I went through a marriage. I had 2 kids. I got married actually in the very beginning just because I thought someone loved me. You know, I just, I'll marry you. I love you. That was it. You know, I thought, wow, this is love. And so I got married. I won't say that I didn't love. I loved at the capacity that I knew, but I didn't know Father's love. I knew conditional love, love with strength, love that I'll give to you if you give to me. And then I had 2 children, and then I got a divorce. And then, you know, when Jay and I met, we were both very broken. And we got invited. Do you want me to go on with my story, or did you want to?
No, go for it. We want to hear.
Yeah. So then we got invited to a little Baptist church, and I you know, I'd never known anything about Jesus. I don't know whether God had raised up like teachers that, I know I had teachers that loved on me because they knew the conditions in our home. And I want to go back and say, you know, I don't blame my parents. I just know that they were running on the hamster wheel of life and doing the best they could. And they didn't know Father's love. So I always want to, you know, tell that, because I never had any feelings towards them that weren't right. I just think they did the best they could. So moving on, when Jay and I met and we went to that church, that was the first time I'd ever met Jesus. And before the altar call was even given, Jay and I and our oldest daughter went running to the altar, you know, and we got forgiven. But what I recognize that is, and I'm going to say in Isaiah 53:5, it's not just about forgiveness. It's also about cleansing your heart and being free. And, you know, Jesus went to the cross for us to be healed, our wounds and physically. And so I didn't know any of those things. And so what happened to me is that I became very performance based. I love what Rob McCorkle says, because he said, some of you guys are making sandwiches for Jesus that he didn't even ask for. And that's who I became.
That's good.
Person that I wanted to please Jesus. So I would put these expectations on myself, and when I couldn't reach those to please him, then guilt and shame would come, and then that cycle would run. And so it didn't take me long to recognize that although he had forgiven my sins, and I was grateful for that, I still wasn't experiencing anything other in my life. I still had the ups and downs, and I was still actually running on the hamster wheel of life, feeling very empty, very alone, very unloved. And then of course, you know, Jay, he became a pastor. He answered his calling. He'd been called when he was 13. And the first thing I said to Jay when he told me that he was going to be a pastor, I was like, does God not know who you're married to? Because I just couldn't accept the thought that God would call a man that was married to a woman like me, you know, because I had no identity. My identity was in whoever was in front of me and whatever it needed to be at that time. And so Jay and I, you know, we served for 8 years in the ministry, and there was a lot of stuff there, and I could tell, but I'm not going to, because that's not part of the story today. But we got hurt, and we left the ministry, and we walked in darkness for 10 years. I mean, we served the world with everything that we had. When we served Jesus, we served him with everything we had. When we served the world, we served the world with everything that we had. And, I was just so broken, continuing, from the time that I'm a child all the way up until I'm almost 50. And I was just broken, alone, ugly, very ugly. And then, of course, Jay's story is Jesus awakened him in the middle of the night. And it took me a little while because I was mad at Jesus. I was offended at Jesus because I thought, how could he allow this to happen to us? Not recognizing that there's an enemy and he works through people, and we're all human and all of these things. But as Jay went back and he became tender, and I noticed what Jay had I really wanted, but I didn't want to give up. And so it took me a little bit longer than it did Jay, but Jay went back into the church, and then I went back into the church. And I remember this is one of my greatest moments, is because I was at sorry, I get weepy every time I talk about this, but I was at a Bible study on a Thursday night at 7:00, and we were in a Beth Moore Bible study, and we were talking about Psalm 139. And I got to the point, to that psalm that said, he knew me before I was ever born. And I was like, I stood up and I just started bawling because I had never read that before. And what that did is that slashed that lie that I had lived at from the time that I was probably 5 all the way up to 50. I had lived in not believing that I was even here for any purpose at all. And so, that probably is what sent me on this journey to find out who this Jesus was. What's this love all about? And all the other things that I needed healing for. Because I really believe that we can't really love others until we love ourselves. And I did not like myself. I had a hard time. I would never let anyone take pictures of me because I didn't like the way I looked. I was so consumed with my outward appearance that I didn't even give a thought to what was going on the inside. And so then I guess, I got my heart purified, and I started this journey of renewing my mind. I felt like the Lord was asking me to take those thoughts that I was having and replace those with truth. And so 1 Corinthians 10:3-5, Paul says that we can take our thoughts captive unto the obedience of God's word. And so I started actively living that way. I would have a thought and I would replace it. I put sticky notes all over my house that said, I'm holy, I'm loved, I'm beautiful, I'm precious, I'm righteous, I'm saved. I had to renew my mind. Everywhere I was, we didn't watch TV for a while because we were so wrecked with lies in our heads that it was all about us. It wasn't every situation that we were involved in. It was always, how does that affect me? How does that affect me? And so Jesus helped me to learn how to replace those with truths. And I would be walking around the house, I had daycare. I had sometimes 15 kids in the house. And I would be like, no, that's not true. And I just speak it out because I believe that for me, I have to hear it. So I always speak it out no matter where I'm at, and then walk that out. And Jay and I are strong believers that we'll always be tempted in the areas that we've been set free from. That's the enemy's job, is to try to take us back into those places of darkness. And so it's just been a journey. I want to love well. I had this book here that, and the lady asked, she said, if Jesus was sitting across from the table from you, what would you ask him to do to help you? And I thought, I just want to learn how to love well, because I've spent a half a century of my life not feeling loved, not loving other people, not caring about other people. And then in 2018, we were traveling with Dan, and we were in Ohio, and most of the time we're ministering, but that night, the Lord really dealt with me, and I had an encounter with him. And I think that he had led me up to a certain place where I needed his validating love to really stamp my heart, to where I didn't waver in that and try to go back to, believing lies again. and he encountered me in a way that I'll never forget. And it changed me completely. But it was like I had this liquid love flowing through me. The next morning, I put my foot down on the floor in the bedroom. We were staying in a home in Ohio. And I told Jay it was like love, like squishy stuff just came through my toes. And all day long, it was like I was being electrocuted with this love,
that's so
that was just,
awesome.
it was beautiful. And from that day
Yeah.
on, I always felt like, before that, I was learning how to love. But from that day on, it was like his love compelled me. I didn't have to try. It was just that he was flowing through me. And so I don't get it right all the time, that's for sure. And, I miss the mark. I think probably the people that are closest to us are the hardest to love. Yeah. And so it's easy to love people from a distance, but it's when you're in those times where, they're not so easy to love, that God can really flow through us if we're unhindered. So, that's been my journey. I just want to love well. I do.
So can you take us to a specific incident, like you're talking about where it gets challenging, and what do you do in that? So, with those people that are close to you, that are around you, that can be more difficult, right? It's everyday life. So, so what's the battle for you, and how do you deal with that?
Well, we had to learn from really the get-go, because we have several kids that are lost. And so we would go out to eat with them, and, sometimes they would say or do things that we didn't agree with, or they might drink something that we didn't agree with. And Jesus talked to us about that, because we were like, maybe we should separate what they're drinking, or, from our bill, and just pay for what we know is right, and those kind of things. And he made it clear to us that just love. Yeah. I mean, just don't become offended. That's the biggest thing. I mean, a lot of people, and I'm one, that can become offended pretty easily. I just went through a healing process of being offended because of, family members, and they don't do it intentionally. They just don't know. And so we have to be very careful not to become offended. So that's one instance. When we sit across the table from our children, we'll just prophesy. We'll prophesy in the spirit, these kids are going to be the greatest Bible leaders, they're going to be worshipers. And because it lifts that discouragement and that disappointment off your shoulders, and immediately you're full of hope again, and your heart is full, and you just feel that unconditional love for them. But if I go there and I've got a chip on my shoulder and I'm offended about something else, it's very hard for me to love. So,
well, and part of that too, when you say you're prophesying, you're speaking what God wants, and you're in agreement with God as far as their future and their destiny. And I love that, because what that does is that's renewing your mind too about how you think about your children. We often don't think about speaking. A lot of people don't understand that prophesying is just speaking things into being that are within the scope of God's will, and people don't understand that. And so I think they get afraid when we use that word a little bit, that they're maybe doing it wrong, or that they shouldn't do it. But I think that's part of renewing your mind and renewing your heart as far as how you see people. It's God is basically showing you how he sees them. And, so I love that you do that, and you're not doing it out loud. You're doing it in your spirit while you're with them. And so I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. He taught us that, right off the start, just to love, to keep your eyes, keep a heavenly perspective, always believe. And like I said, we don't always get it right. Another thing that he taught me from, kind of in the beginning, about the second year that I come back to him, is our church had started doing these love letters. And so we would write love letters to the Lord, and then just write down everything that you could possibly thank him for, and just love on him. And then you put your pen down on the paper and you write, like, Dear Kim. And then you just write every one of those thoughts that come to your head, and you'll know the difference. I mean, you'll know the difference. If it's something negative, then you know it's not from him. But if it's healthy and edifying and encouraging, then you know it's from him. And he'll say things to you that, you know, you wouldn't believe that he would even say, or we would never say to ourselves anyway.
Oh,
So
I love that.
love letters helped me to also renew my mind and help me just to receive his love. That, you know, the greatest thing that I learned, I think, is that we don't have to do anything. Just receive his love. You can go lay on your bed and just receive his love. You don't have to work for him, you know. And one of the main tricks of the enemy that we see across the nation is that people are so condemned. I was so condemned. When I would pray to him, you know, when I first came back to him, I would put, you know, I felt like I was putting my hand up like this because there was so much shame and guilt in my heart because of what I had done. And he loves us.
He's so good. Yeah. He's so good.
People that are struggling right now find themselves easily offended, maybe holding some bitterness or resentment or unforgiveness right now. You know, there's somebody that just agitates them and they think about it all the time, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
That's a tough one. Unforgiveness is a big one. It's just a matter of our will, actually. I mean, we have to forgive. The Bible's pretty clear about that. We have to forgive. So I think you just have to make that up in your mind, you know, that you have to do that. That, you know, Jesus went to the cross for us.
Yeah.
He didn't have to, but he loved us that much. And if we look at everybody as though they're the image of God, whether they've hurt us, you know, whether they've said things about us, we have to look at everybody as our brother and sister. And so, you know, God might be trying to capture their heart and turn their life around. And so we have a responsibility to really just lift them up in prayer. And as soon as you let that unforgiveness go, it's like the weight of the world is lifted off. I had so much unforgiveness in my heart, a lot of unforgiveness towards myself. I mean, I was pretty upset with myself that I had lived all those years that way. So I don't really have a clear answer for that. I just know what the Bible says. And so it's hard, but it's easy. It is hard. But it has to be done.
Yeah, it does. Well, and I think what you said earlier about what happened with your church, you realized that there's an enemy. And really that's true. The enemy is the one implanting bitterness and unforgiveness and offense in all of us because he wants us divided. He wants us divided from each other and he wants us divided from God. And he'll do anything and use anything and to get us to if he can't touch us in other ways, you know, he'll want to trap us in unforgiveness and bitterness. And I think that's one key for me is to remember that. I was just thinking about a situation last night that I was still upset about, you know, and it wasn't, they didn't offend me. They offended someone very close to me that I wanted to protect. And I was, you know, going through all this stuff. And it was like, I finally realized I'm doing the exact same thing. And I don't want to get caught in that trap of bitterness against this person because they hurt a loved one. And I just decided I'm not going there. I am not going there. She is your child, God, and she is your responsibility, not mine. You know? So I think that's part of forgiveness is people feel not necessarily weak, but it's so hard for us to give up our position. Of feeling right. I
remember early on when I got offended, I would always ask the Lord I would say, you change them, Lord, you do something with them. And I would, you know, I would ask him or I'd tell him that he needed to change them. And I remember he was like, Judy, you're the one that has the heart problem. You need to have your heart changed. So that was good. But so to answer your question, Sarah, we just have to. We have to.
Just have to. Okay. So I'm getting the word loneliness right now. And I've been, of course, I work with people stuck in their homes all during the week. But even other people, a lot of people struggle with loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they're with a crowd of people, they can be lonely, and that can be something that really isolates as well. And thinking of people that are battling uh, feeling worthless and not valuable and all of those things, it creates, it just makes it even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of your
Well,
relationship with God and how you said you could just be there, and there's his love. Can you just walk us through that, thinking of people that are feeling isolated and alone and how they can be close to God?
I missed out on the first part of what you said. I'm sorry.
So can you walk us through that, just that your relationship with God, and how you have that intimacy with God, and how, thinking of all the people that feel so alone and isolated right now, and how can you kind of just, what do you do? How it,
Right.
tell us about your relationship with God.
Yeah. Well, I know when I first started out, I would do like what I call a drive-by or a bump and go. I would do just a short little devotion and move on. And I never really allowed him to speak back to me because, if we do all the talking, he wants to speak to us. He wants to, give us insight for the day, and he wants to just love on us and make sure that we are receiving his love. So I think one key thing for me, and it might not work for everyone, but one key thing for me is, I'll read the word. I do different things all the time. Sometimes I read the word and then I'll just sit there and allow him to speak back to me. Sometimes I listen to music while I'm just sitting with him and allow that, just for him to really, I think it goes back again to just receiving from him. Even when we're lonely, we just have to receive his love. Let him fill all those cracks in our hearts. Some people are lonely because they're at home now all by themselves. And I just believe that if we would just call out to him and just sit and allow him just to love all over us. I mean, that's what he wants to do. He wants to get our attention, and he wants to talk to us. And it's so hard. I mean, I'm guilty of not turning down the volume of life and just sitting and listening for that still small voice. Psalm 46:10 is my favorite scripture. Be still and know that I am God, and I will be exalted among the nations. And yet that's the hardest thing for me to do, is to just sit and be still. So another thing that I do if I'm real lonely, if I'm not trying to isolate, because remember that we will be tempted. I always try to reiterate this because we're always being tempted to, that was one of the schemes of the enemy, is for me to isolate and to pull away from people. And, and when you do that, then you become unloved. So a key thing for relationship is to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I just need you to, just love on me a little bit, or just pray for me, or just remember me, or, just, I want you to know that I'm just experiencing some loneliness. So we've got to push past the flesh.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. We do.
We really do.
Yeah. Judy, we usually, and we've got about 9 minutes left. And we usually have our guests pray over the people watching, but I would like you to speak a word over the people watching. Kind of like you do with your children. Would you be willing to do that, or would you rather pray?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll do both.
And then we'll talk. And then we'll talk for a few more minutes, but I just thought I'd like you to do that right now.
Okay.
Great.
So Father, I thank you for every woman, my sisters, Lord. I thank you for every woman that will be watching this video, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you would just be their encourager. I pray that their hearts would be so full, Lord. I just thank you, Lord, for every woman. I pray today that there would be a lifting up, Lord, of their hearts towards you, a lifting up of their chins, Lord. For those that are discouraged, I say, be encouraged. Jesus loves you. For those that are lonely, I pray, Jesus is your comforter. For those that are discouraged, Lord, I pray that you would be their encouragement. And I thank you, Jesus, for every woman that's going to listen to this. I thank you for the ladies that are raising up right now, that you're raising up, Jesus, to just be worshipers. I thank you, Jesus, for those ladies that are going to be encouragers, Jesus, that don't even recognize that your validating love is filling all the cracks in their hearts. I thank you, Jesus, for the ladies that you are going to raise up, that would be the ones that would raise these pastors' arms, Lord, as they step back into their churches, Lord. I thank you for sisters becoming sisters, Lord. I thank you for sisters, reconciliation of relationships,
Amen.
Lord. I thank you for that, Lord. I thank you for the work that you're doing. I thank you that you're moving mountains in every heart, Lord, and every family, Lord, that you're repairing the altar in families, Lord. I thank you for what you're doing. I thank you that we can lay on our bed and just receive your love, Lord. We don't have to do a thing. We don't even have to pick up our fingers. We can just lay there and receive your love, Lord. I thank you, Lord, that you love us unconditionally, unfailing. You are faithful. So, Lord, I pray that today my sisters would be so encouraged, so validated by your love, so hungry for you, Lord, so thirsty for you, Lord, so coming out of their shells, Lord. I pray that shells will be broken, that masks will be destroyed. I pray that ladies will do things. They'll come out of those comfort zones, Lord, that come out of those comfort zones that they've held on to for so long, Lord. Help us, Jesus. We need your help. We want to look more like you. Our sisters are in trouble outside of the kingdom, Lord. And so we need to represent you well. Would you help us to look more like you today? Jesus, we love you, but we don't know how to love. So I pray that you would help us to love, Lord. Help us to love like you. Help us to love without strings. Help us to have agape love for everybody that we come in contact with. Help us to slow down long enough, Lord, that we can give the person in front of us an opportunity to experience you.
Amen.
Jesus, we just love you. And we thank you. And we thank you in advance for how you're going to do this, Lord, because you're the God of possibilities. Every impossibility, you turn around and you make it a possibility. So, Lord, we just thank you. Thank you for this time. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you guys.
Oh, love you.
You, Judy. Well, virtual hug.
Thank you.
That was
so
so great. And we are going to be, this will air on Saturday, the 9th. So tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love you.
So
I hope Karcher cut. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah. That's
Jesus. He showed up, right? He
always does.
You guys are amazing.
I knew this was going to be powerful. I mean, it was so hard to get to it.
Yeah. Well,
Jesus
thank you.
helped us.
Yeah. And thank you so much for being willing to come and share your story. And I think that alone is really huge for women to realize that they have a story and that it's worth being shared. So often we think that our stories aren't valuable to the kingdom, but they are. I mean, they really are. And so
we need to hear them. And he wants to hear them.
Yeah, he wants to hear them. He wants to hear us share that. And so thank you so much for coming on and give Jay hugs for us. And and
I got my mug here.
You have a mug?
What does it say?
See the what?
See the good.
Oh, I love that. Yay.
So good.
Well, Jesus looks so good on everyone, right?
That's right.
He does. And I didn't know you before. I've just known you with Jesus' love pouring out of you. And it's beautiful and refreshing, right?
Yeah.
I want more.
Me too.
So good. Yeah. So good.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Well, we will talk to you later, okay?
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Okay, bye.
Love you too. Bye-bye.